Hello, and thanks for listening. I'm Gemma from Audiobooks.com, and today my special guests are Bonita Stewart and Jacqueline Adams. Bonita's career spans 3 decades, leading multi-billion-dollar operations, accelerating digital technology adoption, and driving business transformation for major corporations in the IT, automotive, and technology fields. Currently, she serves as Vice President, Global Partnerships at Google. Jacqueline launched a second career as a communications strategist after 2 decades as an Emmy Award-winning CBS News correspondent, covering the groundbreaking campaigns of Jesse Jackson for president and Geraldine Ferrero for vice president before spending 5 years as a White House correspondent during the Ronald Reagan and George H.W. Bush administrations. Both Bonita and Jacqueline are graduates of Harvard Business School. Their book, A Blessing, Women of Color Teaming Up to Lead, Empower, and Thrive, released in audio just this week, narrated by Janina. Bonita and Jacqueline, thanks for speaking to me today. Let's start with the book's title, which is a really powerful metaphor. Tell us about unicorns, blessings, and why you decided to write this book.
It's so nice to be with you, Gemma, to discuss the exciting launch of our audiobook this week, our version of A Blessing, Women of Color Teaming Up to Lead, Empower, and Thrive. In our careers, we have often been the only person, the only woman of color in a room. We have been first. I was the first African-American female vice president at Google, and Jackie was the first African-American female correspondent whom CBS News assigned full-time to the White House. So given that we were first, we have often been considered unicorns, rare and valuable beings. Like a flock of geese, a group of unicorns, in fact, is called a blessing, and so we are. You are probably asking, why write this book now? The social and racial protests of last summer have begun to drive some business and political changes, but Jackie and I began our project towards the end of 2018.
Yes, indeed, Gemma. It's wonderful to be with you and your Audiobooks.com audience. When Bonita and I first conceptualized A Blessing, Women of Color Teaming Up to Lead, Empower, and Thrive, no surprise, we teamed up. We had a vision to change the narrative for women of color to create a substantive and scalable rallying cry around this notion of teaming up. Our book is a mission-driven legacy project. We've crafted a thesis, we've grounded it in data, and we illuminate a number of points with anecdotal examples, lived experiences of ourselves, as well as 8 other Harvard Business School Black female alums. And to amplify our work, we reached out to a good friend, Scott Siff. He's a highly respected pollster, and at the end of 2019, we used his firm, Quadrant Strategies, to survey 4,005 American women, so-called desk workers, across 4 races, Black, Latinx, Asian, and white, as well as 4 generations, Gen Z, Millennials, Gen X, and Boomers. And among our most significant findings are the components of what we're calling generational diversity. We've coined this phrase to highlight nuances that we think are being overlooked in today's diversity and inclusion conversations.
In fact, we found that Black and Latinx women, especially our younger Gen Z and millennials, they're more innovative, more likely to be first adopters of new technology. In fact, our respondents said that their work contributes to the social good to a far greater degree than white or Asian women did. And overall, these women are confident that they will control their careers and can find new jobs easily if or when they want them. In fact, the demographics of the U.S. are changing, and by 2027, people of color, that's ages 18 to 29, which is our Gen Z and millennials, they will be in the majority according to the census. And this will be a significant tipping point that will begin to shape the future of the U.S. as well as our global economy. I know from my firsthand experiences leading large teams, the most important investment you will make are the people within your companies. And from our research, we found that these Gen Z and millennial workers are demanding workplaces that provide the support they need to thrive and, in essence, a greater sense of belonging than those of us who are baby boomers experienced or expected.
It sounds like a ton of research went into this book, and I'm wondering what the co-author experience was like together, researching and writing it.
Actually, it was wonderful. Bonita is a great collaborator. She's more organized than I am. I tend to kind of throw ideas against a wall, and I'm good at pattern recognition and sort of follow along. But I think that our two styles work well together. And as we said, we did not start out to write a memoir. We wanted to write a leadership book, and data matters. As Harvard Business School alums, metrics matter. So those factors were important to us. Wonderful.
And I know that the third person, when an audiobook listener is listening, is, of course, the narrator in this equation. As I mentioned, Janina Edwards. She's a fantastic, prolific narrator, and she's the one reading A Blessing. So I was wondering how you came to be part of that process and choosing her, and if you were fans of audiobooks before embarking on this process, just your thoughts there.
Yes, sure. Well, I will jump in because I love audiobooks. However, in this new era of constant screen time, it's actually always nice to give your eyes a bit of a respite and focus on other senses. And I will say from an audiobook perspective, it was so heartwarming to me to hear Janina. In chapter 1, Our Natural Grit, I hear for the first time my father's speech, which is entitled The Trail to Success, being recited to me. And this was through the medium of audio, and to hear his choice words that was handwritten over 70 years ago. I'm hoping for the audience that this will bring joy to them and perhaps a bit of a teary eye to everyone when they hear his poem and life framework around what he called the 4 C's as the trail to success, which includes character, concentration, culture, and courage. It was important to Bonita and me to team up with Black women and men in every aspect of the creation of our book, A Blessing. We specifically asked that a Black woman narrate the book, and just as we hoped, Janina Edwards is an absolute treasure. She reads with understanding. She gets our content and our context. And Janina's voice truly has become our voices. But even more than that, Janina also did a wonderful job reading the words of former Black Entertainment Television CEO Deborah Lee in our preface, and also the words in our foreword of former American Express CEO Kenneth Chenault. Janina has a wonderful ability to differentiate the voices of our various contributors to the book as well. And as a former broadcast journalist, I'm no pushover. I always have had high standards, and Janina more than exceeded my expectations.
That's so good to hear. A narrator really can make or break a book, and as audiophiles, we so love to hear a great narrator bring a book to life. So we're so excited for our listeners to get to hear Janina bring yours to life. Your book, as we sort of alluded to, is releasing at a really unique time in our shared history. And why is this book an important read for right now? Well, I would say, first, I've studied leadership for a long time, and our book is perfectly timed for leaders because we see this dawning of a new era of leadership that's happening right now, which encompasses IQ, which is, intelligence, but bringing along EQ, emotional intelligence, and now this new era includes CQ, which is cultural intelligence. And the complexity of today's workplace is creating this new blue ocean opportunity for companies that are really eager to activate diversity as a competitive advantage.
So what we did in the book, which is resonating right now, is we assessed that there are, yes, deficits in the C-suite, on corporate boards, and in the management ranks, as well as some of the meager VC funding for Black entrepreneurs. And we compared this against the burgeoning assets that are really fueling the situation right now. The first one being the education trends. The census says that Black women are the most educated slice of the U.S. population. Secondly, we looked at entrepreneurship. Studies say that Black women-owned businesses are growing astronomically, and in fact, in 2019, had more than $422 billion in revenue. And then lastly, consumer spending. Nielsen reports $1.5 trillion in consumer spending by Black women, which is more than the GDP of Australia. So we could be our own country. And so clearly, this gap that we see between the assets and the deficits provides an opportunity for what we believe companies should be doing in terms of harnessing the untapped talent, which indeed makes us hopeful.
We see evidence of women of color winning every single day. Just open any newspaper or magazine and consider that now we have a woman of color as Vice President of the United States. And at the inauguration, a fabulous young Black woman, Amanda Gorman, was given what we call the ultimate stretch assignment by Dr. Jill Biden. And Ms. Gorman just thrilled us with her poetry. More and more organizations, we find, are acting on the data that diversity in business does drive profitability. And with societal and governance pressures growing alongside the changing demographics that Bonita mentioned, as well as the unshackled ambition of women of color, imagine the return on investment for companies who approach this talent pool of color with a business model that creates the sense of belonging that we described, a sense of well-being for underrepresented talent. We believe that adopting this model would drive top-line and bottom-line results, effectively creating a scalable model for revenue inclusion.
And so what is something that we can all do starting today to set more unicorns up for success in our workplaces and make our workplaces more diverse?
Well, I would say we now have people that have been reading the book. So imagine listening to this book. It will become a playbook for the unicorns that are out there. And also we have a living log. So within the book, they will have the opportunity to ask questions. We have 8 contributors, so we have anecdotal stories along the way, including lived experience. But more importantly, we have the data to actually back up why we are, the playbook exists. And so we think it's something that can be activated, and I would say stay tuned. We have our new research that will be coming out that we've completed for 2020. And they can visit our website and stay in touch with us at www.leadempowerthrive.com. And that's exactly what we want women of color, as well as the allies, to do, is to lead, to empower, and thrive.
Wonderful. Well, that's all the time we have. Thank you so much, Bonita and Jacqueline, for sharing with me today. The audiobook edition of A Blessing is available now on audiobooks.com.